Hi and welcome to the August update from Dean Park. Lots to share with you this month, including a completed scratch build in the form of a linoleum factory, some stunning new detailing kits from Scale Model Scenery and West Hill Wagon Works, a completed mock-up retaining wall from Scale Model Scenery. I share my views on the announcement from Bachmann of their all-new Class 47. And finally, I'll be looking at this visiting loco, which is the brand new Helian Class 86. If you like what you see, please click on those like and subscribe icons and add any comments in the comments section below. In the meantime, enjoy the video. Being such a large structure, there's a lot going on here, so I'll take you through each individual area and point out areas that I'm particularly pleased with and areas that posed me a challenge during the design and the construction of the build. Okay, first of all, look at the brick panels. These were all individually cut by hand and then put into the position on the front of the building. After that, I then added the concrete horizontals and the verticals. All of these panels are identical in size, so for example that piece of brick embossed could have fitted in there and vice versa. Obviously the narrower ones along the middle there are unique. When I did that, I had to make sure I cut them all straight, and when you're cutting embossed brickwork, sometimes there are lots of rows of small bricks there that can play havoc with your eyes, and you've got to make sure that you don't have a wonky brick set where there's another layer of brick showing at one end than there is at the other. So that took a long time. I seem to recall doing around about the Christmas period, doing a lot of brickwork cutting out. So that shows you how long ago this actual project was in progress, and I'll touch on why it's taken so long later on. The brick I chose was Rail Match dark red brick and then a Humbrol 121 pale stone wash, rubbed off the front of the bricks to leave that in the actual mortar lines, and then obviously I've toned it down with different weathering powders from the Tamiya Weathering Masters to give streaking and general collection of grime around the corners and along the bottom, where obviously the rain would wash all the debris and soot and just general pollution down the front of the building. Being a linoleum building, it didn't have massive factory chimneys spewing tons and tons of black soot into the air, so the building is not absolutely manky. You know, the area in which it was in was pretty much a linoleum hotbed in Scotland, so a lot of the factories were producing the same thing, so the level of weathering has been carefully researched. I've got loads of added little detail in this building, but one of my favourites is this downpipe. It was designed for me specifically for this build by Chris down at West Hill Wagon Works. It's a 3D printed pipe that comes out the wall specifically to clear the horizontal floors below, and the brackets were even designed just so that they were tight against the pipe and obviously kept the pipe horizontal whilst fixed to the wall. So that actually, you know, that actual area there is 3 brackets, the pipe, and obviously it's got to go into the wall, and that kind of plate with the 4 little fixings, if you like, the bolt fixings at the corner, that was designed and cut by me. The whole thing has been primed and painted in a flat aluminium from Tamiya before really giving it a good overall coating to tone it down using the Humbrol and Tamiya Weathering Masters. Another item designed specifically for this build are these vents coming out of what used to be a window. Obviously they're now bricked up, and again these are designed specifically for me by Chris at West Hill. I've painted them in a, I think it was a Tamiya iron colour before using some darker weathering shades with the Tamiya Weathering Masters, and also some rust colours and the silver to pick out the kind of metallic corners on this steel structure. I don't know how well this is going to get picked out on the camera. Hopefully it might be a bit clearer with this little torch. Shows you the detail that's underneath the vent as well. The wooden door here is from Scale Model Scenery. I'll put the code in the description below. This was designed specifically for me at the time anyway, for this factory by Justin down at Scale Model Scenery. Previously only had a kind of roller shutter design in the same size as this, but I wanted to kind of backdate it a little bit, so we came up with this wooden structure. So I'm really pleased with that. I painted it in a Humbrol green colour. I'll put the link to the video where I showed me weathering that actually. I'll put that at the top of the screen now. I use the Tamiya Weathering Masters for that. One of the areas that posed me a few challenges because it's of an existing building that's very tall, therefore it's impossible to be able to see the roof for yourself. I don't own a private jet, helicopter or a drone, so I couldn't really get a close-up view of what it was that it was made of and all the details on it. However, I relied on aerial photographs from the 60s, 70s and 80s, and some into the 90s in fact, to get a sense of what the factory roof looked like at that point. As you can see, it's not flat backed, it's at an angle. You can probably see that by the angle of the joins there. I'm getting slightly larger towards the left hand side. That is made from MDF, and I've just etched and engraved those lines to give the representation of different panels of roof material. The colour of it is a Precision Paints weathered concrete with a mix of darker greys like Humbrol 32, which is one of my favourites. And then I obviously weathered it around about the joins. I did some pre-shading on that actually, and there's more grime round about the sides, maybe where the water would just collect at the corners and stuff, because a roof is never flat really, is it? Especially if you've got a massive section of panels that the water's got to flow somewhere. And it probably would have been designed to run off to the corners anyway, and maybe some internal downpipes in the building to take the water from the roof. There are no external downpipes on this particular building, so obviously they've made them internal. The building itself is quite higgledy-piggledy with its design and build. You get the impression they built a bit, then they added another bit on, then they did something else and they added a bit on. And this is really represented in this wall here. It's not along the sides, and it's not here either. It's just here, and I don't really understand why they did that, but I've replicated it in this model. The roof edge itself is 2 bits of 1mm MDF, and they're tapered, so the one underneath sits behind the one on the top. Again, I've represented the real thing. The wall sits on top of that, and I've just made these small brick buttresses, and the wall even dips down here as well, just like the real thing. It's slightly more simple in decoration than the real thing because I'm looking at a very limited space here. I didn't want to overdo it and make it look contrived. All these top sections again are made from MDF, and I've just engraved the joins in the actual stone or the concrete slabs there. A lot of the buildings around the time, especially around the Nairn Linoleum Factory, had these seemingly pointless little kind of towers jutting up from the roof line. I suppose in this case it's for the access to the roof there, and there's obviously, you can see the door there. This has been made with a similar edging as the rest of the building, where MDF around the side there to replicate the concrete. It's stepped in as well, so there's 2 layers of 1mm MDF there. The railings, they actually sit into small holes that I've drilled in the MDF themselves, so the railings don't actually need glue to stay in place. I've glued every 2 or 3 of the verticals of the railings just to hold them in place, but in theory they don't need glued in, they actually just sit in. The railings are very, very fine 3D printed. They're 0.4, 0.5 in places, and these were designed and printed for me by Chris down at West Hill again. This is one of the reasons this build took so long, months in fact. Obviously Chris is pretty busy, and we're trying to get as fine a fence or railing as possible to look right, to be the right scale, to not overpower the actual, the structure, and really the thinnest you could go is 0.4, 0.5 without it just disintegrating on the printer. So he's done a really good job there, and I've just painted them in a Tamiya grey primer actually from an aerosol and weathered them down with some weathering powders. The step on the back here, the kind of access step or the industrial step there from Scale Model Scenery, again if you click the link in the description below you'll find them on the website, no problem. They're a great little kit, they can be cut to any length really, and it just nicely hooks over the concrete bit there, as you can see. That was more by luck than by design, I have to say. Again, the roof's been given a weathering with some darker greys just to give the impression of accumulated dirt. We're right under a light here, it's maybe not showing it up too clearly just now, but certainly when it's in position on the layout you'll see it more clearly. The final angle on the roof, you'll see this little corner brick pillar here. I wasn't going to put that in, I was actually going to get the railings to go around the corner, but I thought, you know what, let's try and keep it as authentic as we can, so I put this little, it was just blocks of, I think it was MDF glued together and then covered in embossed brick, and then you've got the railings meeting that at the corner, and again you might be able to see there the railings sitting in the pre-drilled holes on the roof edging, and the railings go into the build there. I've made sure that the uprights, the verticals, aren't right at the end of the railing, so you've got the uprights there and it goes into the, like these would have been cemented into the concrete uprights. The same at the corner here, so it's not just a case of, right, the uprights are right butted against the edge. That's not realistic. And there you might be able to see as well the curves of the end of the railings, just like the real thing. One of the many features of this build, as per the prototype, are the bricked up windows. These were easily done using bits of MDF with embossed brickwork on them, put into position. They're set slightly back as per the prototypes, they're not flush with the front. They're a different colour, these are Rail Match light brick. The reason I've done that is because if you, for example, get an extension in your house, you'll never get the brick to match up exactly to the original brick of the house. Different batches of bricks, different age, and obviously your brick on your own house is weathered through time. So that's how I managed to get that kind of difference in the appearance, again as per the real thing. I left the concrete ledge in place. They just did that when they bricked up the windows, they never took them out, they just left them in, came along, done. Window out, brickwork in, thanks very much. Okay, so that's how I've tried to replicate it. The actual concrete ledges themselves go around the corner of the window a little bit. They don't just stop on the corner of the edge of the window line, they extend a couple of mil. That's kind of what I do on my builds with the window ledges. I just like that kind of feature. Just a quick look into the back of the build. You've got a horizontal strengthener there to stop the roof from sagging and anything moving. You've got this strengthener here, it keeps everything square and vertical. Through this part here is the tower that juts out at the front. Through that bit MDF there you've got the brickwork. Through this bit MDF you've got the hollow section, which is an area the interiors will slide into, and you'll see a small V cut out at the bottom there. That's for the wires to come through from that for the lighting, and there'll be an interior section there to satisfy the views through those windows. So that's it, the factory is now completed and in position. The interiors are also in place, and it's sitting perfectly flat onto the concrete area which I covered in a previous update. The link to that is at the top of the screen. I've also added some weathering in, which I covered in that update, to blend the building in, to make it look like it actually is meant to be there, not just plonked on the surface. I will be adding some debris and some weeds and grasses around the bottom of the factory, just to blend in a little bit more. I'm not going to overdo it, but pallets and stuff lying outside the factory will help just blend it into the base. The far side along here is the Nairn 2 building, which is currently under construction. I'm making some good progress on that, so hopefully I'll be able to share that with you in a future update. So in the meantime, there you have it, the first Nairn linoleum factory completed and on the layout. Here I've got some kits I've been building and detailing in the last month. At this side we've got some Scale Scenery stuff. Some new kits are their BMX bikes I've added to the layout. Code for that is LX166-00, and I've picked out all the little bits of individual detail, including the pedal, where the chain is, and even the silver on the underside of the seat. So you can add as much or as little detail on that when you paint them as you want. If you look on top of the desks, tables and chests there, you've got some fine individual tool detail, spanners, wrenches, pliers, screwdrivers, G-clamps, etc. I've added those to my existing Scale Scenery depot stuff, and I've also supplemented it with some of the West Hill Wagon Works toolkits, etc. At the right hand side here, this is wholly West Hill stuff. Again, I've got some tables there, metalwork tables, and I've adorned them with some of the Scale Scenery tools, and again some of the toolboxes, and I've shown you that before, but that's a small pillar drill. The kind of mechanical and engineer's tools, the code for that is LX366-00, and they are minute in detail. They really are cool, and you get a lot of them for workshops and obviously for mechanical based things, so ideal for a depot. Down at the front here we've got some point heater gas cylinders, and these were quite common on parts of the network to keep the points up to temperature during the colder months, and you get 4 in a pack, and they're varied. So for example, this one's got the 2 cylinders in it, so you've got one that's operational and a spare one. This one, it's the spare one's been used at the moment and connected up, and we also get ones that are empty, so they do various configurations of these, and these are on the West Hill Wagon Works website. Link is in the description below. So there we go, 2 manufacturers complementing each other perfectly. We've got workshop tools from Scale Scenery, and we've also got some toolboxes and bench machinery from West Hill Wagon Works. That's me now finished mocking up the scale model scenery retaining wall, made from MDF with individual engraved brickwork. It's one of Scale Model Scenery's premium kits, and Justin's done a fantastic job with the detail here, and it goes together so easily. Such a well designed kit, so hats off to Justin there. Big well done from me. I've painted it in a Precision Paints Engineer Blue Brick before going over it with a mortar wash of Humbrol No. 1, which is their primer colour, thinned it down very slightly and painted it all over, waited for it to kind of dry just a little bit, and then wiped it off with a paper towel dampened with enamel thinners, and it leaves the mortar wash in the brick course there. It's not as easy to put brick course on MDF using this technique as on, for example, plastic embossed brick, but you've got to play around with it until you're happy with the technique. What I've then done is I've used the paints again, taking the Precision Paints Engineer Blue Brick and lightening it and darkening it with some different tones of greys to give a variation, and I've gone in there with some Humbrol 32 as well, just to give a variation in the brickwork. Then I've gone with some Tamiya Weathering Masters to add some different tones and dirt to the brickwork, as well as some lime and general staining down the front of the bricks. I really am pleased with how this has turned out, and I say I've got a lot of them to do, but if this is anything to go by, it will look stunning when it's done. Let me know what you think of this retaining wall, especially in this shade of brick, and obviously if you've tried one yourself, let me know how you got on with it. As many of you will know who follow my channel, the Class 47 features heavily at Dean Park. It's my favourite standalone diesel locomotive, and it originally gave birth to my channel name, Dave Class 47. So as you can tell from that, it's pretty high up my order of interest with regard to locomotives. Therefore, last week when Bachmann Europe announced an all-new Class 47, I was very excited and keen to see what they had on offer. Richard Proudman and David Parsons went through in detail all the variants that they're going to offer over the coming years, and what I'm basically going to do here, I'm going to give you my views on it. I'm not going to go into too much technical detail, you can look at the Bachmann video for that, but just to give you my general thoughts on what we see coming in the coming months and years with regard to this all new Class 47. Bachmann have announced 5 Class 47s from launch, and the first of them being this two-tone green one. It's original livery basically, with the small yellow warning panel, 4-character head code and red buffer beams. Whilst this won't find a home at Dean Park, because it's not my era, it really does impress me with the the level of detail that they've managed to get on this model. I understand that the greens have been altered for the production, so this model here is the pre-production green livery. So if anyone out there thinks, oh, that shade's a little bit off, Bachmann have addressed that apparently. The new model, is, as I said in their video, is new from the rails up. However, it does borrow a lot of, I would say, assembly and design cues from the previous Bachmann Class 47. Initially, I don't see a lot externally with the body shell anyway that's different, but as I go through the video on this feature, I'll point out things that I think have been updated and improved. But bearing in mind the current Bachmann model is an absolute belter, so really there's going to be a lot of similarities between the current one and this new one. I think where the improvements lie are in the internals with the electronic and lighting capabilities and some of the bogie and underframe detail. The next one is the classic blue with yellow ends, and in this case sporting the iconic domino head code. It does not have the high intensity headlight fitted just above the buffer beam, so this dates the model from the late 70s into the early 80s. High intensity headlights were fitted from around 1983 onwards on these Class 47s. The third and by far my favourite announcement was this Class 47-4 in attractive intercity Swallow livery. This one's got the cutaway buffer beams and appropriate pipework, and was a cross-country machine which found its way, obviously, up and down the country and into Scotland. So that's why I'll be adding this particular model to my collection. What interests me and it really appeals to me with this one is the previous intercity Swallow ones that Bachmann have done have been kind of trains allocated to the Royal Train duties. So they've had all the embellishments of the white wheel rims and red buffer beam. This one's just an everyday run-of-the-mill Class 47 in Swallow, so it will fit right in with the forthcoming Mark II Fs in the same livery from Bachmann. So yeah, I'll be purchasing one of these, and I might go for the sound fitted deluxe model for this particular one, because the livery for me is so iconic and really one of my favourites that the Class 47 wore. The next model comes in two-tone subsector livery with the construction emblems on the side. This has got a Tinsley crest under the cab. However, it did actually receive this repaint and operate in Scotland at Eastfield, so I could simply place an Eastfield plaque over the Tinsley printed plaque to date it up to the late 80s, early 90s, and therefore add it to my fleet. I've not ruled out adding this one to my fleet. I've always liked the two-tone on the Class 47s. It really does suit it with the Class 47's clean lines. So yeah, this could be a possible addition in the future. The next model was a bit of a surprise to me actually, because this particular livery, albeit not the named version, has appeared before from Bachmann, and I didn't think it was a particularly quick seller. So we'll have to see how this one fares in the old sales stakes. Can't deny it's a cracking looking model, but it's got all the embellishments on it, such as the picked out springs, pipework, axle boxes, and these white wheels, which I just don't think suit the Class 47, or indeed many locals for that matter, unless they're in preservation or doing a special run. So, you know, I think anyone who buys this particular one will certainly be giving it a tone down with the weathering. But you can't argue, it looks a cracking model, and if it's anything up to Bachmann's usual standards, the application of the livery will be spot on. You'll probably see from this angle the detail into the side of the bogies. The previous one, or the current one, has got a good bogie detail, however it lacks a bit of depth. So Bachmann have said that they're going to basically fill in the gaps, and they've given secondary suspension detail there, so you'll not be able to see in as far into the bogie, into the brass pickups and the copper pickups that you did probably see on the previous one. So yeah, it's an improvement, but if you look at this particular model from the side and the current one, which I've studied closely along with the pictures, it's very, very similar. As you can probably see through the side window there in the body side, you'll see a wee bit of orange detail. That's an addition that's not been there previously. We've got a wee bit of internal detail in the engine room, but unless you put the lights on in the engine room compartment, which are going to be fitted as standard, you won't particularly notice any of the detail that Bachmann have added. All models come with cab lights as standard, and on DCC you get the ability to have them go off as the loco pulls away, just like the real thing, because you wouldn't see a driver tootling around the main line with his cab lights on, just like you wouldn't drive at night with the interior lights on in your car. It inhibits your view through the windshield. There's also, as I've touched on earlier, the lights in the engine compartment. Whether those are any use to see any of the detail remains to be seen, but again, an exciting feature that I've actually had on my Class 85 from Bachmann for many years. This model features an upgraded electrical package where you can independently work the head and the tail lights. One all new area is the cab, or the cab detail. In previous releases there has been basically a very shallow or high floored cab, where the cab seat is basically at floor level, so you didn't get past the waistline, if you like, of the driver. There was no painted parts in the cab, and if you actually wanted to get the cab out yourself to do any of this detail, it was a right pain to try and remove it, to be honest. This new cab has got bulkhead detail, as you can see, being picked out in paint, including the handbrake wheel. The seats have a deeper relief to them, so the driver can have legs. Interesting to see if any of the manufacturers of 3D printed drivers bring out new drivers specifically for this model, so we can get a wee bit more of the driver on show. There's more detail on the actual control panel, and some of that's been picked out with paint. However, whilst an improvement in visual terms, if you look into the cab, how often do you look into the cab? I mean, I've got so many locos. I've got the HST, for example. It's got an absolute stunning cab interior, also the Class 50 and Class 56s from Hornby, and even the Class 60. And very rarely does stare into the interior. And you won't see it unless it's lit as well. But hey, it's welcome that Bachmann are up in their game and take on the kind of challenge laid down by the likes of Accurascale, who've started to incorporate cab detail into their latest releases, including the forthcoming Deltix. As I indicated in an earlier clip, you have the sound-fitted deluxe model. Now, all models are fitted with speakers as standard. Then you've got the sound-fitted one, well, obviously you get a sound decoder in that, and then you've got the sound-fitted deluxe, which comes with extra features, including these rotating fans. And these are run off a separate motor, so they're not the same as the Hornby ones in the early 2000s, which ran off a kind of pulley system, which really inhibited the performance of the loco, and most people, like myself, just took a pair of scissors to the rubber band and got rid of it. And you know what? I've not missed not having rotating fans. I think it's a bit of a gimmick, but I'll be interested to see how the Bachmann one performs with the separately fitted motor. The second feature available on the sound-fitted deluxe models is this tinted glazing, and this appears on the front two panes of each cab, but not the side cabs, as is the prototype. Now, the reason for doing this on the real thing, they gave it a coating to speed up demisting of the windscreen and prevent steaming up of the windshield as well. Now, this particular picture maybe doesn't do it justice. It looks a bit purpley and green, but I'm assured by those in the know that it looks stunning on the layout. Okay, it all depends on where the light is, I suppose. In this situation where they're taking a picture in a kind of sterile environment with a lot of white backgrounds and lighting equipment, probably doesn't show off to its best. However, it'll be interesting to see how it looks on the models when you get them in your hands. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of similarities in the design and maybe the assembly of the current 47 to this all-new 47 from Bachmann. Let's just, for example, look at the buffer beam steps. On the previous one, they were separately fitted parts. They're the same on the new one. On the previous one, the cab front had 4 small grooves to allow the body to sit properly on the buffer beam whilst the steps were in place. As you can see from this, it's exactly the same. So whilst I accept it's a brand new model, because the previous one was such a good model and such a highly detailed model, I don't know if you will notice much of a difference placing them side by side without going really into it and looking at particular areas such as the side of the bogies and underframe detail. What do you think of the new Bachmann Class 47? Have you planned to get one or more than one? Which model are you getting? Are you getting the base one, the sound fitted, or are you going to go and treat yourself to the sound fitted deluxe to see what all this excitement about the fans and the glazing is about? I'm certainly going to buy myself the Swallow one, as I indicated earlier. I might go for the sound fitted deluxe just to see how good the glazing looks. I certainly can't afford to spend £314 or whatever on a Class 47 every time, but being a modeler that's got most of the liveries that he needs, I'll not be adding another 20, so I can maybe justify treating myself to a sound fitted deluxe one in Swallow livery. But let me know your thoughts, the bits that you like, the bits that you're a bit confused about, or perhaps the bits that you just don't like. Post your comments in the section below. As I said in my introduction, this is not my model, it's a visiting loco on the layout, and this belongs to Chris down at West Hill Wagon Works. I asked him to have a little look at it before I made a purchase on the Class 86/4s, which are due out towards the end of this year. One area that's really impressed me is the underframe, the minute detail that they've incorporated into the midsection there, and indeed the bogies, really does bring the model alive and really does replicate the real thing so well. When I took out the box, I initially thought, oh, those windows look a bit tall. However, looking at the prototype, it does capture the face of the Class 86. Obviously this is in an earlier version with the 4-character head code, so it's not really relevant to my era here at Dean Park, but really what I'd like to see is a later version in this BR blue, because I think the Class 86 really did suit this livery as it did the later Intercity Executive. The cab detail is adequate. Okay, it's not up there with Hornby, Acura Scale and the forthcoming Bachmann Class 47, but it does the job, and as I often say, who actually looks in the cabs anyway? So I'm quite happy with the level of detail that they've incorporated into this cab. The roof detail on this is stunning, and they've picked all the panels out in the correct shades with the detail there. The insulators are securely fixed to the top of the roof, and an area which is usually quite a flimsy and fragile area in AC electrics is this connecting wire here. Hylian have picked it out in actual wire and not flimsy plastic, so that's really good. It feels robust. The pantograph is a massive improvement on the previous Class 86 and it's sprung, but yeah, I'm really impressed by the quality of that. I would have liked to have maybe seen a wee servo motor like they did on the Bachmann Class 90, so you can adjust the height. That would be the creme de la creme and really the Rolls Royce of pantographs, in my opinion. But yes, I know that would push the price up. I'm really impressed by the buffer beam area on these locos. They've got a nice quality feel to the spring on the buffer. We've got the pipe work and hoses attached in the correct positions, and they're nice and thin and well painted as well. They're not too unrealistic. One issue I have got is Hylian have taken to fitting the pipe work etc. to both ends of the loco. That's all very well if you're running it light engine, but if you want to hook up the NEM coupler to this, then you're going to have to either snip them off or take them out, which is a bit of a faff. I'd rather they just put it on one end, like Bachmann sometimes do, and allow the modeler to decide whether they want it on the number 2 end. So maybe that's something that Hylian could look at with future releases. What you'll have noticed in the first few clips is that the 86 is running with its pan in the down position, which is unrealistic if you've got the train operating with overhead wires. So what I've done with this is I've managed to poise the pantograph in the right height for my layout, and I've done that using a very, very thin piece of enamelled wire, and you might be able to see that kind of copper coloured wire here. And all I've done with that is I've twisted it round the base of the pantograph and then looped it through one of the arms of the upper part of the pantograph, and it holds it in position. Now if I want to take that off to store it, I just simply feed the bit of enamelled wire out and it's no problem, so I can still store it. It's not glued in position, it's not permanently fixed. That just gives me a bit more flexibility, especially when it comes to storing it in its box, and it looks correct and it clears my contact wires on my overhead masts. Well, that's it for this update. If you're still watching, thanks very much for tuning in. Obviously, the summer's coming to an end here, especially in Scotland. So what we'll be doing in the next 4 to 8 weeks is really gearing up in the autumn to start big projects on the layout, including the development of the west end of the layout. In the meantime, if you want to watch any more videos, please click on that little icon at the bottom right hand side of the screen, and it'll take you to my channel where all my previous uploads are available to view. In the meantime, stay safe. Thanks for watching. Cheers for now.